Welcome everyone to The Voice of Europe, a new project from La Voce di New York with the goal of bringing in voices from European politics for an American audience. And I'm here with Sandro Gozi, who is
Hello.
a member of the European Parliament in the French constituency, am I right?
Yeah.
And so you're the first one to graciously accept our offer of trying to expand the reach of European political voices in the US for an American audience. So let's get right down to it. Well, what's the goal of reaching an American audience?
Well, the goal is that I think that we have to talk more and more across the Atlantic. I always been convinced about this. I'm even more convinced now with the new administration in Washington, which seems to have a slightly different approach from ours to our mutual friendship. And I think that it is very important that we talk to the Americans and to the many Europeans that are in the States. And I think that a modern way of doing politics is to talk across the border. So I thank you very much for this initiative, and I'm very pleased that our party responded positively to the initiative that you do to everybody.
So just to expand on that a little bit further, why should an American care about what happens in European Parliament?
Because what it happens in the European Parliament affects also the Americans, and what it happens in the Capitol Hill affects also the Europeans. We are more and more interdependent, and you can see it even now in the difficult beginning that we have with the new administration. The American majority in the House and the new president, for example, criticized the European Union for the legislation we adopted on digital issues. I disagree with the criticism, but it's legitimate. But I give you the example why they criticize, because they know that what we do has an impact on American companies, on European-American relationship. And the other way around is also true. What you decide in the state affects also the Europeans. So it is clear that in a more and more interdependent world, it is more and more important to have a dialogue not only between political forces, but to address also to the citizens living on the other side of the Atlantic.
One major issue that has been coming up recently is that of defense spending, and French political leaders have been speaking to that recently. I have some quotes here from President Emmanuel Macron talking on the French news channel BFM TV yesterday, said that Europe needs to, quote, rediscover the taste for risk, ambition, and power, and reject dependence on the US. Speaking in Le Figaro last week, European Democratic Party President François Bayrou said that, quote, a European defense organization will be the only viable solution.
I totally share the declaration of Emmanuel Macron and François Bayrou, and I think that also our American friends should be happy about that, because the message that has come from Washington, not only with Trump, but I would say since the Obama time, was that we should become adults when it matters security, that we should assume our own responsibility as Europeans, and that we cannot rely totally on the US effort. The US has done a great job to ensure our security for more than 70 years, but the different administrations have always told to the Europeans, you must take on more responsibility to ensure your security within the NATO framework, within a transatlantic operation. And I think that Emmanuel Macron is very right. We have to become more autonomous, we have to become more independent. We need to build up a truly military and industrial European power, and we have to do so because we have to better contribute to the security and stability in Europe and in the world, but also because there can be a divergence of interest between us and our allies, and we need to be able to intervene when we think it is in our interest to intervene. And the Ukraine case is a clear example. If, and we hope the sooner the better, of course, there is a peace in Ukraine, I think that the Europeans must be ready to take on the responsibility of the peacekeeping mission, and we need to give ourselves the equipment, the power to do so. And also François Bayrou is very right. I mean, we are entering into an era where the multilateral rules are weaker and where the balance of power matters much more. And in an era of balance of power, either you give yourself the power to sit at the table, or you find yourself in the menu. And I prefer to sit at the table than to be in the menu.
So the Trump administration has called for European powers to devote as much as 5% of national budgets towards a military force in Europe. Does that sound in line with what Macron and Bayrou have been talking about, do you think?
5% might be too high, but certainly the debate about the 2% is totally obsolete. And certainly we have to go well beyond 3% in Europe. And I think that we shouldn't only focus on spending more at national level. We should focus on how to spend more and better at European level. I think that if we develop a truly European defense fund, if we use the European budget, if we use new instruments such as Eurobond, like we have done during the COVID crisis, to boost our military power and to support our industry, I think that we would gain much more than only spending more nationally. We need better coordination, we need better cooperation between the different member states, and we need also some political coordination when it comes to the military issues. Therefore, the time. I mean, Macron has been talking about a European military power since 2017. I think at the time we cannot wait that everybody agrees. We cannot oblige any government to go along this line. We need a group of countries which take the lead to move toward a truly European defense power. And certainly at the moment, Emmanuel Macron from France, Friedrich Merz from Germany, and Donald Tusk from Poland seem to me the most committed toward this end. I don't understand what the position of Italy is. As an Italian, I hope that Italy will want to be in this avant-garde group, in this core group, which will be decisive to build up a truly European military power.
Speaking of Ukraine, as you had before, you mentioned peacekeeping forces. So far, European countries have been reluctant to make that kind of commitment. What do you think will need to change? What do you think is a factor that might affect the ability or the willingness of European countries to commit forces in Ukraine?
Let me explain why I personally think that would be absolutely necessary is exactly the example that I was giving of the table or the menu. The Europeans want to sit at the table of the peace negotiation and of the peace implementation. Very good, very legitimate, because there cannot be a discussion on European security without Europeans, as there cannot be a discussion on Ukraine's future without Ukraine. But to sit at the table, you need to bring something. And this something that we bring is certainly, openness to Ukraine in the future. There is a negotiation going on for the accession of Ukraine to the European Union. But certainly this is for the medium-long term. And in the short term, we have to be ready to do our part to ensure that this peace is a long-lasting peace. And the only way, in my view, to ensure this is to be ready to send troops on the ground. I want to be very clear, not to fight, but to keep the peace after the peace has been signed. And this is why I think that the supposed divergences about which the press and some government talk concerning the Paris summit are not that big, because all the European governments which gather in Paris are aware that they have to take on more military responsibility. The question is the timing right now? Is the right timing now? Of course not, because now it's the war, it's not the peace. But when we enter into the phase of the peacekeeping and peace implementation, certainly the European must be ready to do their part.
Turning back to US-Europe relations, what relationship do you think is between US Democrats and European Democrats?
Not strong enough. Not strong enough. I come to the States regularly, at least 3 times per year, to Washington, to New York, because I'm totally convinced that in modern politics, in our time, it's impossible to carry out a very effective politics and to implement, consistent policies if we don't talk each other across the Atlantic. If you think that you can be effective doing politics, only remain within your national borders, even if they are, broad borders like the one of the US, you are totally wrong. And the paradox is that the nationalists and the sovereignists seems to have understood this much better than the Democrats. After all, there was a big gathering in Washington a few days ago of this Conservative Political Action Committee, promoted by Steve Bannon, with the presence the support of Donald Trump, of other members of the administration, and they were invited in presence or in video conference all the extreme right leaders in the world. There was Milei from Argentina, there was several representatives from the extreme right parties in Europe. Giorgia Meloni gave a video conference. I mean, it is a paradox that the sovereignist and nationalists understand and are much more active on international cooperation than the liberal and the Democrats. And this is the message that I'm trying to send across in this country. I think that we have to better structure our dialogue, to have better structure our relationships. I was in Washington a few days ago. I met Neera Tanden, that now she's the new CEO of the Center for American Progress. I met Will Marshall of the Progressive Policy Institute, Don Beyer, the prominent representative from Virginia for the Democrats. And I mean, I see that there is awareness that we have really to intensify our cooperation. If we manage to even to structure it in a way similar to the one of CPAC, I think that would be in our common interest.
Turning to trade, what can you tell us about a free trade deal that is currently being negotiated by the EU and India, which is, I forget, is EU India's largest trading partner, or is it the other way around?
I'm very keen in a relation with India. I also played a role. I have been the chair of the Italian Parliament delegation for India for many times, for a long time. And now I am the chair of the EU-India Association. So I mean, I really convinced that there are very strong mutual interests between Europe and India. And I think that also the fact that, for example, was India together with France, Narendra Modi together with Emmanuel Macron to chair the big summit on artificial intelligence is a sign that we consider India as a strategic partner in the world reorganization, because we live in a new world disorder. And I think that the reorganization of the world passes through also a strong cooperation between Europe and India. The negotiations on trade agreement are difficult with the Indians, are difficult because they want to protect strongly some sectors. But I think that we have to intensify our negotiation. Even really in these days, the European Commission, I mean the College of the Commissioner is in Delhi to discuss about how to enhance relations between the Indian Union and the European Union, and I think that we have to push towards that direction.
Keeping our focus on Asia, what about the European Commission, Parliament, European political structures relationship with China during this situation?
It is changing. I think it is becoming more realistic, more pragmatic. We have stopped to talk about China as a strategic partner. Certainly, I mean, an unavoidable partner, because we got strong trade relations between China and Europe. But it is clear that there is a divergence on the strategy to reorganize the world. There is a divergence on the strategy towards even the Ukrainian conflict. There is a divergence between other Chinese concerning what to do with Russia. This is the paradox which I lived in Washington in these days during my visit, because all the interlocutors of the new administration and the Congress from the Republican insisted on the fact that China is the major threat to US. If China is the major threat for US, why are you so keen on Euro bashing? If you think that the Chinese are the danger, why do you say that the European Union was bored, I quote, to screw the United States of America? It doesn't make sense. I mean, why do you want to push some European towards China if you think that China is the main competitor? So, I mean, there are several contradictory messages which are being sent now from Washington, on which we have to work much more.
During the Obama administration, John Kerry was presented with a trade deal from the Chinese that was some kind of expansion of their Belt and Road Initiative, and recently he stated that one of his biggest regrets was that he had not taken them up on such a deal, and apparently, apparently there's a similar offer of trade relations with Europe being offered, and so in light of John Kerry's comments that he wishes the U.S. had taken them up on it, what do you think the Europeans' position is on such a?
I don't know. I don't know about. I mean, I don't know what are the reasons that push at the time U.S. to make certain choice and to push now John Kerry to say what they have said. In my view, with China, we have to be much less naive than we have been in the past. It is clear that, I repeat, in an interdependent world, be it on trade, be it on technology, be it on critical material, be it on the fight against climate change, you have to try to talk and to try to work with the highest possible number of actors, and especially with the key actors. And for us, the key actors are certainly the United States of America, China, India, Brazil, Latin America. These are the unavoidable, indispensable actors, but I would be less naive. After all, in the 90s, we thought that opening the World Trade Organization to the Chinese would have brought naturally the Chinese to develop also their democratic stances, to respect the rules. This hasn't happened. So I don't think that to join in the Belt Road Initiative can ensure that there could be a better cooperation from the Chinese on certain issues. So I mean, let's be realistic, let's be more pragmatic. We don't want to have a conflict with China, but we don't want to be naive, as in my view, we have been in the past.
Thank you for joining us today, and
thank you.
Thank you for giving us a whirlwind tour of what is a very, shall we say, interesting situation in global affairs right now.
Thank you, and I thank the Voice of New York for this nice opportunity that is giving to the European Democrats, and I hope that many others will want to follow.